Back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have back on the show Abdul El-Sayed, a doctor. He served in President Biden's Unity Task Force for Healthcare, author of the book Medicare for All, and he was on in April when he kicked off his campaign. He's running for the United States Senate in the beautiful state of Michigan, and already endorsed by Bernie Sanders. Abdul, great to see you, my friend.
Dean, it's a privilege to get to catch up, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
We talked in April, the beginning of the campaign, and so you had just started going out and campaigning. You've been out all summer. I'm seeing clips all over the place. I saw with Bernie talking about my name might be different, and so are my ideas, which I like that very, very much. I got my good idea. I like that. I want to steal that if I ever run for office. I'm like, Obeidallah is a different name because I have different ideas, folks. That's what I'm about. So tell people, share a little bit. How's it been through this whole summer campaigning nonstop?
Dean, I'll tell you this. I took a bet on a Michigan that was big enough for ideals and ideas that would help to address the challenges that too many people are facing. I'm not new to public service in my state. I've been at it now for 10 years. And since we kicked off, I've been to 57 different cities. I've done more than 100 public events. And I don't do these little clutches where, it's tailor-made for political consumption. I go everywhere, talk to everybody. I don't know who's going to show up. And when they ask questions, I don't know what questions they're going to ask, but I aim to answer them. And no matter where I go, people tell me the same thing. It just shouldn't be this hard. You could be in a church in Redford, right, just near Detroit, or you could be up at a VFW hall in Escanaba in the Upper Peninsula. You could close your eyes, and it's as if people are saying the same things. It just shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard to afford a second carton of eggs or a second gallon of milk. It shouldn't be this hard to see a doctor. It shouldn't be this hard to stay in my job or believe I could ever own a home if I'm under 40 or stay in the home that I've been living in for decades if I'm over the age of 65. And that tells me that there are a clear set of understandings that people have about their politics. And our job is to be able to deliver real solutions to that pain and those challenges. And we're running a campaign to do three simple things. We want to take money out of politics, we want to put money back in people's pockets, and we want Medicare for all. And I think if we can take on the pain that too many people are experiencing, regardless of where you go in our state and frankly all over this country, I think we can build a movement that's greater than the sum of its parts. And that may mean that I end up in a US Senate seat, but more importantly, that we have promise to be able to get us past this political morass that we find ourselves in right now.
So wherever you travel in Michigan, you are hearing, is it in essence affordability? The idea of just making ends meet as prices keep going up, and are you also hearing about concerns about the economy going forward because consumer sentiment's gone down again?
I'll tell you this, it's the insecurity that comes with the combination of affordability and the fear of losing your job.
Mhm.
It's the question of whether or not I'm going to be able to afford tomorrow, in particular, given the sense that I worry that today was less affordable than yesterday. It's people reading the trend line and saying, this doesn't end in a great place for me. And they're watching this president and saying, it's pretty darn clear this guy does not give a damn about my life and is too incompetent and too self-engrossed to actually fix problems for people like me.
So that's right. And I imagine you must bump into many people who supported Donald Trump, obviously. And
Yeah,
and what's their reaction now, 9 months into this, 8.5 months into this?
there's a bit of buyer's remorse. Some people will tell you, some people won't. But the fact that they're coming to a town hall with someone like me, it tells me a couple things. The first is that they're really, really frustrated by where the country is going. And it's been, what, 8 months under this leadership? I think we would know by now if there was some sort of miracle that Donald Trump was hiding from us. There is none. And the
Right.
second is that the politics in the sense that we come to them, right? We tend to analyze them in the perspective of right versus left. I think to most people, they don't really think about right versus left in the same way that people who spend a lot of time thinking about politics do. Instead, they're thinking about people who feel locked out like them and the people locking them out. And they're looking for folks who have been on the right side of those who are locked out, trying to find the key and help them in. And that's been what I've been up to for my whole career. I'm a guy who worked in local public health. I went into public health when I realized that our healthcare system that I was training to be a part of as a doctor was too often on the wrong side of the kind of patients who got locked out of the system. And so I wanted to be about unlocking that system. We eliminated upwards of $700 million of medical debt for upwards of 300,000 people in Wayne County. We put glasses on tens of thousands of kids' faces. We put life-saving Narcan, naloxone that reverses overdoses in 100 locations in my county. We stood up to big corporate polluters. And so I got the receipts when I say, listen, I think the system is not working for you. And I've been on the side of folks like you my entire career. And this is what we could do together if we come together around a politics that is bigger than the sum of its parts.
And what do people say to you? I mean, and what I mean by that is I'm sure that they applaud it and they like it, but they hear politicians or people running for office saying things that they want to hear, and the system doesn't change. And some people are sincere and try to change it and they can't change it. Look at if we had Bernie's way, America would be far better, but he's sincere about it. I mean, do you have people who are cynical, or do they go, okay, I'm ready to believe again. I'm going to take a chance with you.
Dean, I'll say a couple things. People have been under pain now for a very long time. And as someone who trained in medicine, I can tell you when people have suffered chronic pain, there is a cynicism that sets in about whether or not it could ever get better. And
Right.
when they talk to somebody, they're looking for a couple of things. A, do you have a track record actually making it better in the work that you've done?
Right.
And B, do you understand why I'm so pissed off? And like I said, I've been at it now for 10 years, and the things I've been talking about, they haven't changed. So I've got the receipts both in terms of the public service that I've rendered and the conversation that I've been having about what I think could actually solve these problems. And so when they come and to our events and they raise their hand, they ask their question, I could feel that cynicism, but at the same time, I can see it starting to thaw down into just a little bit of hope. And the thing I'll tell folks is this: I'm actually not afraid to tell you what you don't want to hear, right? Because that's what being a good doctor, frankly, is. Like oftentimes people want to say, here's a miracle cure. No, usually when somebody's presenting a miracle cure, there's no miracle and there's no cure, right? And so oftentimes it's about being able to say, all right, so here's the situation. Here's what we understand about what's causing it. Here's what we can do and here's what we can't. So what can we do together to actually start taking this on? And I think politics should be treated the same way. So I don't walk in and try and treat folks with a bunch of hopium. I really don't. So I'll
Mhm.
tell folks when I don't believe that there is a set of solutions or a thing that I believe not to be right. And what I find is that it's actually refreshing for folks. When you sit down with them and you openly disagree about a thing, they realize that actually if you're willing to tell them what you think, then you're also willing to fight with other folks about what you think. And chances are they agree with you 70, 80% of the time. So what they're seeing in you is someone who's more interested in being an arbiter of the truth than someone who's more interested in saying whatever needs to be said to win a vote. And that's what I think people are so sick about when it comes to politicians. And I'm just not a politician, right? I trained as a doctor. I've been a public
Right.
servant the majority of my career. So I'm going to tell you what I see to be the truth, whether you like to hear it or you don't. But chances are, I'm pretty certain that you will trust me as someone who's always willing to show up and say what I believe and what I believe the truth to be.
I'm chatting with Abdul El-Sayed, a doctor who's actually running for the United States Senate for the Democratic nomination in Michigan. And it's a very robust campaign going on there. I saw it was a really huge rally that you were a part of with Bernie Sanders, the Fight Oligarchy rally. I thought it was, and I watched some of it. I was watching your speech. I'm like, this is really good. So share with people what the energy was like there and what resonated with the people the most. Because obviously people are self-selecting, they're coming in, they're Bernie people. But in that world, what also resonated the best?
Well, I'll tell you this, the excitement was infectious, right? You just had a group of people there who are sick and tired of the system being corrupted around them by the likes of Donald Trump and the oligarchs he surrounded himself by. And they want honesty, they want integrity, and they want an understanding that you're going to show up and you're going to take on that system to unrig it for them.
Right.
And with Bernie Sanders, you've got a guy who's been fighting for that kind of America for longer than I've been alive.
Mhm.
And with me, you've got someone who's been doing it for the entirety of my public service career. And folks can feel that. And more importantly, they can feel one another's excitement and joy. Sometimes I think in modern times, we're so used to transacting everything alone, right, via a screen. And we don't know how many people really do agree with us. But when you see them there, live in living color, you hear their voices and you feel their presence. There's something really exciting about that. And that was the atmosphere in that room. And my goal was to be able to have a conversation with folks in the state about what's possible, right? Tell them about the kind of America my dad took a bet on back in 1978 when he chose to move here. My parents moved here and immigrated, took a bet on an America where it didn't matter if their kid's name was Abdul or anything else, that they could imagine their kid growing up with the same basic rights and the same opportunities, and how unfortunately our system has denied those opportunities to too many kids, and about what's possible if we're willing to actually do the work of building a politics that brings us together. And then we talked about the central message. Look, our goal is to do three simple, very difficult to achieve things, but simple things. Get money out of politics. Take on the power of corporations under Citizens United to corrupt our politics from underneath us in ways that leave us getting paid less for the work we do and having to pay more for the things that we have to buy. We want to put more money back in people's pockets. That means a fairer tax system. If you're a
Right.
billionaire, look, there should be a specific billionaire tax because you already won. Like that's it. How much more do you need? And you think about the implications of what could be brought back into a system to provide for healthcare and good infrastructure and quality schools. You think about the role that unions have in shaping the middle class and making it easier to join or form a union. You think about an economy that actually is built by and for small businesses rather than by and for huge corporations. These are all things we need and deserve. And then finally, in the richest, most powerful country in the world, there shouldn't be medical debt that has to get abolished. And the way we fix that is to finally get on to doing the work of passing Medicare for all. And it has never been more important to do than it is right now, given all that RFK Jr. and his brainworm ideology are doing to the Department of Health and Human Services in our country. And so folks are thirsty for that kind of an honest, raw, direct kind of message. And one last point, Dean, just because I know it's something that you think a lot about and you talk a lot about on your show, people understand that in an era where our kids' schools are crumbling, maybe instead of sending blank checks to foreign militaries to drop bombs on other people's children and subsidize a genocide in Gaza, maybe instead we could be spending that money here at home, building our kids' schools and our kids' hospitals. And when I say that, I'll be honest with you, it didn't matter who it was in the room. Everybody gets it. It was one of the biggest applause lines of the night. People understand that their tax dollars are being misappropriated. And if we're actually going to make it easier to live in America, maybe the way to do that is to spend our money here at home rather than making life harder for people abroad.
Yes, and that's a great line, and it's really effective in terms of framing. It's the truth. We should be using our money for ourselves, not giving it for a genocide that the U.S. is getting, that we're involved with, that we're a level of complicity in all of this at this point. Because without our aiding and our support of the military, it doesn't happen. I want to go back though. Since you're a doctor, everybody hears Medicare for all, and as insurance prices are going to go up and up and up this year, especially if the subsidies for the ACA, the enhanced premiums, don't get renewed because Republicans don't want to renew it, but Democrats are fighting for it. How would Medicare for all actually work? I don't mean detail like insurance, but I mean, I know Bernie in the past talked about bringing down the Medicare eligibility age is one way of doing it, going from 65 to maybe 60 or 55. Is that a practical thing, or how do you see it? We don't have to go into great detail. I'm just taking a broad stroke.
Yeah, I want folks to understand there's not like a light switch where you turn
Right.
on and all of a sudden you're on a Medicare for all. There is
Right.
going to have to be an implementation plan around how we get there. And there's a number of different ways to do that. You could phase it in via age, you could phase it in via different spaces in the economy. You can imagine everybody on Medicaid goes into Medicare, and then from there, folks who opt in from private insurance, and then over time, it takes
Um,
on and becomes a sort of safety net that's available for everybody.
right.
There's a number of ways to do it. The key thing, though, and I want folks to understand this, is that right now our healthcare system is too expensive, and it's not just too expensive; its prices are going up every single year. It is too fickle, meaning you can get pushed out of your health insurance for a number of different reasons. You get married, get divorced, you turn 26, you get a job, you lose a job. All of these are reasons why you potentially could lose your private health insurance. And for nearly 10% of Americans, they don't have it at all. And then when you think about how healthcare works on the reimbursement front, all of these different health insurers, they have different reimbursements, they have different networks. It
Right.
changes your experience depending upon how you are insured, and that makes the system illegible for most people. What we want is a streamlined system where every single person gets access to guaranteed health care that is affordable and accessible, that does not require you to pay at the point of care in the form of a deductible or copays or coinsurance, that you cannot lose by virtue of your employment status or your age or your marital status, and that is going to be there for you independent of the circumstances of your life. And then finally, that is more affordable for you because you don't pay at the point of care, and also holds down the prices of healthcare so you don't have this massive healthcare inflation that all of us are struggling from underneath. Medicare for all would achieve all of those outcomes. And by the way, before anybody comes out and tells me, oh, but that'd be a nationalization of the healthcare system, no, it wouldn't. It'd be a nationalization of health insurance, which adds zero value in our system and is failing to do even the basic things it's supposed to do in the first place. Instead, it actually allows healthcare markets to really function because now, rather than having to be the biggest provider that can command the biggest reimbursement rates from health insurers, you have to be the best provider that people actually have to choose because there is no in-network, out-of-network gatekeeping. This
Hmm.
system would help to solve almost every major problem in healthcare, and the experience of it would allow all of us to breathe a collective sigh of relief because we're not all so afraid about what's going to happen with our premiums next year or whether or not we're going to lose our insurance with our job.
I'm so glad I asked you that. Being an exo-medical doctor, but explaining it in a way that makes all the sense in the world. And look, I've long been for it. I mean, we're the only industrialized nation, first world nation that doesn't have it for our people. Something Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders deserves a lot of credit for many things. This for me is one of the biggest because he made me go from like, how could we have this to why don't we have this? Like, this
Yeah.
is ridiculous. We
You
should
know,
have this.
the question people ask you when you talk about Medicare for all is, well, how can we afford it? The question I keep asking is, how can't we?
Right.
Right? How can we afford going on with this current system? I mean, I talk to union leaders all the time in Michigan, and they always tell me the most complicated part of bargaining with management is having to bargain for health insurance. So I'll bargain for a raise and to keep the insurance where it is. But here's what happens. Because healthcare inflation is so big, because the premiums go up so fast, healthcare ends up eating all of our wage gains. So what literally is happening is unions are negotiating wage gains. They get eaten up by healthcare companies that end up going to those health insurers so that the health insurance CEO can make 18 million bucks and buy a yacht parked outside of Corsica. Like
Right.
I don't know about you, but I don't go to work every day to make a health insurance CEO more money. And I don't think anybody wants to keep doing that, watching their wages slip away so that a health insurance CEO can pocket their healthcare dollars that they had to bargain tooth and nail for. That happens every day in America. That should not happen. It does not have to happen. We can't afford the status quo. What we can afford is finally to do the thing that every other high income country in the world has done, which has reduced the speed of which their healthcare grows in price. We could do the same thing here. And if folks don't believe me, look, I live very close to Canada. I used to work as the health director for Wayne County. I could literally see Canada from my office. And when I look over the Detroit River, I would see a place where they live 2 years longer lives. They wait less time for healthcare on average, particularly specialty care.
Mm-hmm.
They are happier with their health care in their country, and they spend about 60% as much as we do. I don't understand. Like we just can't keep going on like this. And my
No.
point is like the only reason we do is because healthcare CEOs and their PACs can spend money to buy politicians to make sure that those politicians don't ever change the system. Something's got to change, y'all.
I agree. I'm talking about Abdul El-Sayed running for the United States Senate in Michigan, a Democratic nomination. And also, this goes back to the other issue, which is getting big money out of politics. If you get big money out of politics, politicians have to be more responsive to us, not their elite donor class who are funneling money legally into their super PACs, which are absolutely bribery. It's a joke to say that they're not bribery. How do we get big money out of politics? I mean, it's just a long-term game of trying to get control of the Supreme Court, amend the Constitution. What do we do?
You know, Dean, I wish I could snap my fingers and take the money out of politics. I
I
really
know.
wish. But instead, what we all have to do is do the long, hard work of uncorrupting our politics. Right now, we all live as victims of a Supreme Court decision that was made in 2011 called Citizens United. It interpreted the Constitution to mean that the 14th Amendment included corporations as people, and the First Amendment included their speech, their money as speech. Okay.
Mhm.
So corporate money equals personal speech. That's what Citizens United interpreted, which is insane because, like, if you asked a
Right.
corporation, who its first kiss was or why it
Yeah.
named its first child what it did, there's no answer there because corporations are not people and their money is not speech. But here we are. So, what we need to do is pass legislation that explicitly bans corporations from participating in our politics. Certainly, it's going to be challenged and it's going to go to the Supreme Court. But I actually think that, first, let's not pretend that the Supreme Court is not a political body. It is, right?
Mhm.
It's politics by other means. It's undemocratic, but it is political. And And I think we need to dare them, right, to make the same wrong decision. Because I think at this point, there is enough consensus, both among Democrats and actually a good number of Republicans, that this has been a disaster for our politics. And if they do uphold their terrible decision, I think that we need a number of reforms when it comes to a number of anti-democratic aspects of both the court and the Senate, right? I don't believe in a Senate filibuster. I think a filibuster is anti-democratic in the Senate. And at the same time, I think the way that we apportion the Supreme Court is ridiculous. I think we need some kind of limits on terms, whether that be age limits or that be term limits. I think we need to think about the number of appointees per president. I think that, the arbitrary number of having 9 Supreme Court justices is just that. It's arbitrary. It's not founded in the Constitution. And I could imagine a way where you could pretty fairly open up the opportunity for the court's growth. But I do think that we need to get back to getting to basic democratic norms and mores, and thinking about the ways that our democracy isn't quite democratic. And these are just a few to name.
I agree. And people know the Supreme Court, if a Democrat's running for office and is not committed to reforming the Supreme Court, then in my view, you're not sincere in your efforts to want to change things, because you have to be, because that's the thing holding everything up. We could pass laws, they're going to strike it down. And look, it's not going to be easy. We have to win the House, Senate, and the White House. So last thing, Abdul, that since you're a doctor, RFK Jr. is out there saying things all the time. He's literally now, it's clear he's going to make people unhealthy. He's misleading good people to not care for their children the right way, or not listen to doctors. Listen to RFK Jr. What is your biggest concern in our last 2 minutes from you hear RFK Jr. talk about vaccines and healthcare that alarms you?
I come from a family where I had an aunt and uncle I never got to meet because they died as infants. My dad watched them die before his 5th birthday. My grandmother lost 2 babies to whom she gave birth. I'm worried about the babies because infants' immune systems are not sufficiently developed to be able to get vaccinated. And so they rely on all of us getting vaccinated to protect them. And in an era where you start pulling away vaccinations, what's going to happen is the most vulnerable of us are going to feel it first, right? Things like measles, mumps, flu, COVID, right? These are all things that would be way worse but for vaccines. But particularly when you think about things like measles and mumps, these are potentially deadly for babies. And our failure to protect our most vulnerable is probably the biggest indictment on a political movement that you could imagine. And this is a national security issue, and we need to be thinking about it that way. Folks don't realize this. There's an Ebola outbreak right now, right? And usually, right, under normal circumstances, you'd have CDC personnel right there on the ground battling that epidemic so that it didn't make our shores, right? Under this CDC, it's hard to know what's really happening. And certainly with the turmoil at the top, right? It's hard to know what's happening. This is what RFK Jr. is exposing us to. And the thing about public health threats is they happen quietly, right? Usually in the shadows, and then they come on very, very quickly. And if you don't have the agency that's working quietly behind the scenes in the shadows protecting you, it's only a matter of time. We should have learned that lesson from COVID, and somehow, ironically, it just made our public health protections even worse. So this is a really, really dangerous thing when people lead with ideology instead of science, when they put their political aspirations ahead of the well-being of the rest of us, and then say that they're doing it for us. That is really, really dangerous. And that's unfortunately where we are right now.
Well, I appreciate that. And Abdullah, it's great chatting with you. If people want to find out more about your campaign, volunteer, donate, whatever, where can they go?
I hope they'll go to abdulforsenate.com. You can also text join to 74801. And then follow us on all the socials, TikTok, Instagram, the other place. I'm at Abdul El-Sayed.
Brother, nice seeing you, my friend. I wish you the best. I look forward to continue our conversation the next few months. See how the campaign's going and what's going on. And maybe I'll come out to Michigan at some point and interview you in person. But I wish you the best, brother. Good seeing you.
Dean, you're always welcome, and we'll look forward to it, okay?